A little girl fighting for her life. A name whispered beside a hospital bed. And a smile no doctor could explain. This is a story about a miracle many believe came from the Virgin Mary. But before we continue, tell me something in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I'd love to see how far these stories travel around the world. Have you ever had that moment when you look at your life and feel like everything has finally fallen into place? That was exactly how Sarah felt. After years of trying, she had finally landed the job she wanted. The hours were good, the pay was steady, and most importantly, she could pick up her daughter Emma from school every afternoon. Michael had recently received a promotion at work. Nothing spectacular, but enough to bring a little more money into the house each month. Maybe even enough to finally take that trip they had been promising Emma for years. And Emma was 7 years old. That wonderful age when children are old enough to be independent, but still young enough to run to their parents for a hug before bed. She had just joined the school soccer team. She wasn't very good at it, but she loved every second. Every afternoon she came home covered in dirt and sweat, talking endlessly about practice, about the other kids, about how one day she would score a goal. Their house wasn't big. The refrigerator made a strange, buzzing noise that Michael kept promising he would fix one day. But it didn't matter, because it was theirs. It was home. Friday nights were always pizza night. That tradition had started when Emma was a toddler. They would order pizza, watch a silly movie, and Emma would beg to stay up just a little longer. And Sarah, almost every time, gave in. Michael worked long hours, Monday through Saturday. He left early every morning and came home exhausted. But no matter how tired he was, he always found the energy to play with Emma before bedtime. Sometimes it was just 5 minutes. Sometimes it was chasing her through the house pretending to be a monster while she ran away screaming with laughter. It was a simple life. The kind of life that feels ordinary because you believe it will always be there. Sunday mornings had their own tradition. Emma would wake up early, run into her parents' bedroom, and jump onto the bed. Pancakes. She always asked for pancakes. That Sunday was no different. Emma woke up early. She asked for pancakes. Sarah made them. Emma ate too and complained she wanted more chocolate syrup. Everything about that morning was completely normal. So normal that no one thought to remember it. No one knew it would be the last normal morning for a long time. Monday began like every other Monday. Sarah woke up early, made coffee, and packed Emma's lunchbox with the sandwich she loved. Michael had already left for work. Emma was in her room getting ready. Or at least she was supposed to be. Emma, come on, you're going to miss the bus. No answer. Sarah walked down the hallway and pushed open the bedroom door. Emma was sitting on the edge of the bed, just sitting there, staring at nothing. Sweetie, what's wrong? My head hurts. Every parent has heard those words before. Children always seem to have headaches when they don't want to go to school. Sarah placed a hand on Emma's forehead. It felt normal, not hot. You'll be okay, she said gently. Take some medicine and you'll feel better. Emma slowly got ready for school, dragging her backpack behind her the way kids do when they don't want to go. Sarah didn't think about it again. The day rushed forward. Emails, meetings, phone calls, the usual chaos of a Monday. Then, at 2 in the afternoon, the phone rang. The caller ID showed the school. And sometimes, before you even answer, your heart already knows something is wrong. Mrs. Johnson, the voice said. This is the school nurse. Emma isn't feeling well. She got sick during class. Could you come pick her up? Sarah shut down her computer instantly. She grabbed her purse and rushed out of the office without even explaining why. In the car, her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. But she told herself the same thing every parent tells themselves. It's just a virus. Kids get sick all the time. When she arrived at school, Emma was lying in the nurse's office. She looked pale, very pale. Mom. Her voice sounded weak, as if even speaking required effort. Sarah helped her stand up. Emma leaned heavily against her. Her legs barely supported her weight. That was the first moment something inside Sarah began to tighten. During the drive home, Emma rested her head against the window and closed her eyes. She didn't say a word. Not one. And Emma was always talking. Always telling stories. Always asking questions. The silence felt wrong. At home, Sarah laid her gently on the couch and covered her with Emma's favorite blanket. A pink blanket covered in tiny stars. The one she had carried everywhere since she was little. Do you want something to eat? Sarah asked softly. Emma shook her head. Sarah called Michael. I think she has a virus, she said. I'll keep an eye on her. Do you want me to come home? No, it's probably nothing. But as the afternoon passed, that uneasy feeling inside Sarah kept growing. Emma barely moved. She didn't get up. She didn't ask for water. She didn't even go to the bathroom. She just lay there, too still. My head hurts more, Emma whispered later. She asked for the curtains to be closed. She asked Sarah to turn off the TV. The room slowly filled with darkness and silence. Sarah sat on the floor beside the couch, gently brushing Emma's hair away from her forehead. Now it felt warm. Very warm. Sweetheart, where does it hurt? Everywhere. The word came out heavy. Sarah gave her medicine. Emma swallowed with difficulty and turned her face away. When Michael finally came home, the sun had already disappeared. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. He stepped inside and immediately saw Sarah sitting on the floor beside the couch, looking at Emma. How is she? Sarah didn't answer. She simply looked at him. And in that moment, Michael understood. He knelt beside the couch. Hey, champ, he whispered. How are you feeling? Emma slowly opened her eyes. She looked at him, but it was as if she couldn't really focus. As if he were far away. Dad, I don't feel good. Her voice sounded strange. Slow. The words blending together. Michael looked at Sarah. Sarah looked back. They didn't need to say anything. We're going to the hospital. Michael lifted Emma into his arms. Sarah grabbed her purse with trembling hands. In the back seat, Sarah held Emma tightly against her chest. Stay with me, sweetheart. Okay. Emma didn't answer. Michael drove as fast as he could, glancing into the rearview mirror every few seconds. Running yellow lights. Ignoring the horns behind him. Sarah whispered constantly into Emma's ear. Words that barely made sense. Anything to keep her awake. Anything to keep the silence away. But Emma felt heavier. Her breathing changed. Michael, I know. We're almost there. They arrived at the emergency room. Michael stopped the car crookedly in front of the entrance. He jumped out, carrying Emma before even turning off the engine. My daughter needs help. A nurse looked up. She saw Emma, and her expression changed instantly. Come with me. They rushed through the doors. Another nurse appeared. Then another. Machines. Wires. Voices speaking quickly. Words Sarah didn't understand, but somehow knew were bad. Sir, ma'am, you need to wait outside. She's our daughter. I know, but you have to step outside now. The door closed. Right in front of them. Michael leaned against the wall and ran his hands across his face, trying to breathe. Sarah slid slowly down to the floor, hugging her knees. Rocking slightly, trying not to fall apart. The hallway felt too bright, too white. People walked past. Doctors, families, nurses. But for Sarah and Michael, the world had stopped. Have you ever waited for news that could destroy your entire life? The kind of news that can change everything in seconds? Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Sarah stared at the clock on the wall. The hands moved, but time didn't. Finally, the door opened. A young doctor stepped out. His face was serious, exhausted, and Sarah knew immediately. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson? They stood up too fast. How is she? The doctor inhaled slowly. We were able to stabilize her, for now. But the situation is very serious. Very serious. The words echoed in Sarah's mind. Is she going to be okay? The doctor didn't answer, and that silence said more than any words could. We're doing everything we can. Can we see her? For a moment, the room was cold, filled with machines and blinking lights. And in the middle of it all, Emma. Sarah rushed to the bed and held her daughter's hand. Mommy's here, sweetheart. You're not alone. But Emma didn't move. She didn't open her eyes. There was no sign she heard anything at all. Sarah never left that room. Michael brought clothes. Coffee that grew cold before she could drink it. Food she barely touched. She slept, if it could be called sleeping, in the uncomfortable chair beside the bed. Every hour she woke up. Every hour she checked if Emma had moved. The first morning arrived quietly. The pale gray light of dawn slipped through the hospital window. Emma hadn't moved. Not once. Same position. Same tubes. Same machines. Sarah walked slowly to the bed. She held Emma's hand. Good morning, sweetheart. It's Mommy. Silence. Did you sleep well? The machines are noisy, I know. Sarah spoke softly, the way she used to wake Emma for school. Daddy will be here soon. She gently squeezed Emma's hand. Waiting. Always waiting. For the smallest response. A movement. A squeeze. Anything. But the hand remained still. A nurse entered the room, checked the monitors, and wrote something on a clipboard. Sarah watched her carefully. searching her face for hope. But the nurse said nothing, and the machines continued their steady, mechanical rhythm. Something inside that room had changed, and Sarah could feel it, but she didn't know yet that the most impossible moment of her life was about to begin. How was her night? Sarah asked the nurse quietly the next morning. Stable, the nurse replied. No changes. That word, stable, didn't mean better. It only meant things hadn't gotten worse. And in a hospital room like this, that was sometimes the only good news you could hope for. Michael arrived a little later carrying 2 cups of coffee. He gently placed one on the small table beside Sarah. You should go home for a few hours, he said softly. Take a shower. Get some real rest. Sarah shook her head immediately. I can't. What if she wakes up and I'm not here? Michael opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He knew there was no point, so he just nodded. Okay, he said. I'll stay. And she stayed. The second day passed slowly. Michael brought Emma's favorite teddy bear from home and placed it carefully beside her pillow. Look who came to visit you, he whispered. Mr. Fluffy missed you. Sarah spent most of the day talking about anything, everything, memories, stories, moments from their lives, anything to break the unbearable silence in the room. Do you remember the beach last summer? She said softly. You were scared to go into the water, but once you did, you didn't want to leave. Sarah laughed a little, but the sound of it hurt, because it was an empty laugh. Michael sat quietly on the other side of the bed. Sometimes he added a sentence to Sarah's stories. Sometimes he simply listened. They took turns leaving the room. One would go eat something. The other stayed. Someone always stayed. On the third day, the doctor arrived early in the morning. Sarah stood up from the chair before he even spoke. Her heart was already racing. How is she? She asked. The doctor looked at the monitors, then at Emma, then back at Sarah. There haven't been any significant changes. Sarah swallowed. But will she wake up? That was the question she asked every single day. And every single day the answer was the same. We can't predict that, the doctor said gently. Every case is different. And if she wakes up, Sarah whispered, will she be okay? The doctor hesitated. Just for a second. It's too early to tell, he admitted. We'll evaluate once she wakes up. Once. Not if. Once. Sarah held on to that word as if it were a promise, even though the doctor hadn't actually promised anything. The fourth day came. Sarah was beginning to run out of stories. She had already told Emma everything she could remember. Every vacation. Every birthday. Every silly memory. So she started talking about the future. When you get out of here, she said softly, we're finally taking that trip. You remember the amusement park we talked about? We're going. I promise. Sarah looked closely at Emma's face. Searching. Hoping. Waiting. And you'll go back to soccer, she continued. The girls on the team miss you. Your coach even called to ask about you. Still nothing. Emma. Her voice trembled. Please give me a sign. Move your finger. Open your eyes. Anything. But Emma didn't move. Not even a little. Sarah leaned forward and rested her head on the edge of the bed, holding her daughter's hand tightly. I can't do this without you, she whispered. Please come back. Her tears fell silently onto the blanket. Michael returned to the room and found her like that, crying, holding Emma's hand as if letting go might mean losing her forever. He didn't say anything. He didn't try to comfort her with words. He simply pulled up a chair and sat on the other side of the bed. Then he took Emma's other hand. The two of them stayed there in silence, each holding one of their daughter's hands, as if love alone might somehow bring her back. The fifth day brought something different. Sarah woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. At first she didn't know why. Then she realized. The sound. Something had changed. One of the monitors was beeping faster. Sarah jumped out of the chair and stared at the numbers on the screen. She didn't understand what they meant, but she knew they were wrong. She pressed the call button. A nurse rushed into the room and immediately looked at the monitor. Then she called out into the hallway. I need the doctor. What's happening? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The nurse didn't answer. Within seconds the room filled with people. Doctors. Nurses. Machines being adjusted. Voices speaking quickly. Ma'am, you need to step outside. No, Sarah said. Please, the doctor insisted. You have to step out now. Michael pulled Sarah gently toward the hallway. She tried to resist, but her legs gave out. She collapsed against him. They waited outside the room, holding each other. 20 minutes passed, but it felt like 20 hours. Finally, the doctor came out. She's stable, he said. We managed to control it. Sarah released the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Can we see her? Yes. They walked back into the room. Emma looked exactly the same, as if nothing had happened. The 7th day arrived. An entire week. 7 long days with Emma lying in that bed. Not waking up. Not moving. Nothing. Sarah prayed every day. But that week she had prayed more than she ever had in her life. The words now came automatically, like breathing. Holy Mary, Mother of God. Michael had stepped out to get coffee. The room was quiet. Just Sarah, Emma, and the steady hum of machines. Sarah continued praying softly. Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. She looked at Emma as she whispered the final words. Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus, please help us. And then, something happened. Emma's lips moved. Sarah froze. It was barely noticeable, just the smallest movement. But Sarah saw it. Emma's lips formed a tiny smile. Soft, gentle, a real smile. Sarah's heart began pounding so hard she could hear it. She blinked, looked again. The smile had disappeared. Was it real? Or had she imagined it? No, she had seen it. She knew she had. Sarah sat down slowly in the chair, her hands trembling, her heart racing. She picked up the rosary again and began to pray once more, this time slowly, carefully, listening to every word. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Sarah reached the final words of the prayer. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. And Emma smiled again. This time there was no doubt, no confusion, no possibility that Sarah had imagined it. It was real. Michael, she screamed. Michael. He came running back down the hallway, coffee spilling from the cups in his hands. What happened? Sarah was standing beside the bed, staring at Emma with tears streaming down her face. She smiled, Sarah said breathlessly. Emma smiled. Michael rushed to the bedside. But by then Emma's face was still again. When, he asked. While I was praying, Sarah said. When I mentioned the Virgin Mary. Twice. She smiled twice. Michael looked at his wife. Are you sure? Sarah didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Michael pressed the call button. A nurse entered the room moments later. Our daughter gave a sign, he said quickly. She smiled. The nurse looked from them to the monitors, then stepped closer to Emma. When did it happen? Just now, Sarah answered. The nurse examined Emma carefully. She checked reflexes, studied her face, watched for movement. Nothing. I'll call the doctor, she said. The doctor arrived a few minutes later and repeated the same routine. He checked the monitors, examined Emma, watched her face, and finally straightened. There's no change, he said. But she smiled, Sarah insisted. I saw it clearly. The doctor gave her that look doctors sometimes give when they think they're protecting you from hope. Mrs. Johnson, he said carefully, I understand this is difficult. No, Sarah interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. Don't look at me like that. I'm not imagining this. I'm not making it up. My daughter smiled. The doctor was quiet for a moment. Then he answered gently. Patients in this condition can sometimes have involuntary reflexes. It wasn't a reflex, Sarah said. It was a response. She heard me. Michael reached for Sarah's hand and held it tightly. The doctor exhaled softly. There was nothing more he could say. When he left the room, Sarah sat down again beside Emma. She picked up the rosary and looked at her daughter's still face. You heard me, didn't you? She whispered. You're still there. I know you are. Michael sat on the other side of the bed and took Emma's other hand. We're here, champ, he said quietly. We're not going anywhere. Sarah looked down at the rosary, then up toward the ceiling, and under her breath, she whispered, Thank you, because for the first time in 7 days, hope had returned. After those 2 smiles, time began to drag again. The 8th day passed, then the 9th, then the 10th. Emma remained the same, and Sarah kept praying. Michael had to return to work. There was no other choice. The bills were still waiting. Life outside the hospital kept moving. But Sarah stayed by Emma's bedside, praying, talking, waiting. Her mother brought food, clean clothes, and little updates from outside. The whole church is praying for her, she said one afternoon. Sarah nodded gratefully. Thank you. On the 12th day, Michael came to the hospital after work and found Sarah asleep in the chair. The rosary was still wrapped around her fingers. He stood there for a moment, looking at his wife, looking at his daughter, and something tightened painfully in his chest. How much longer could they survive this? He sat down on the other side of the bed and took Emma's hand. "Hey, champ," he whispered. "It's Dad." He started talking. About his day. About a stupid joke someone told at work. About the neighbor who asked about her. "Everyone misses you," he said softly. "But no one misses you as much as we do." He stayed until late. When Sarah woke up, they ate dinner in silence, then returned to waiting. The 13th day began before sunrise. Sarah was praying again when she noticed it. Something was different. It took her a second to understand. Emma's breathing had changed. It was deeper now, stronger, more natural. Sarah stood up immediately. "Nurse." The nurse came in, checked Emma, and called the doctor. He arrived quickly and began examining her. Then suddenly, Emma moved. Her hand squeezed Sarah's. Hard. Sarah froze. "Emma." Slowly, Emma turned her head toward her mother and opened her eyes. Sarah let out a cry she didn't even know was inside her. "Emma. Emma, sweetheart, you're awake." Emma looked around the room in confusion, disoriented, trying to understand where she was. Sarah leaned close, her whole body shaking. "It's okay," she whispered. "Mommy's here. You're safe." Emma looked at her mother, really looked at her. Sarah held her hand and cried openly now. "You came back," she whispered. "You came back to me." The nurse began calling instructions into the hallway. More staff came in, but Emma kept looking at Sarah. Then, in a broken, weak voice, she spoke. "Mom." "I'm here, sweetheart," Sarah answered immediately. Emma's lips trembled slightly. "I heard you." Sarah stopped breathing. "What?" Emma blinked slowly. "Praying," she whispered. "I heard you praying." Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. The tears would not stop. The doctor stepped in, calm but firm. "Mrs. Johnson, she needs to rest. Her body has been through a lot." But before Sarah stepped back, Emma tightened her grip on her mother's hand. "Mom." "Yes, baby." She was there. Sarah frowned through her tears. "Who was there?" "The Virgin Mary." Emma's voice was weak, but clear. "I saw her. She stayed with me." A chill ran through Sarah's whole body. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. She left the room trembling and called Michael. She was crying so hard she could barely get the words out. She woke up. "Michael," she woke up. He arrived before sunrise. When he entered the room, Emma was sitting up in bed with the help of a nurse, drinking water. He stopped in the doorway, unable to move, unable to believe what he was seeing. Emma looked up. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was hoarse and weak, but it was her voice. Michael crossed the room in 3 fast steps and bent down to hold her carefully. Sarah stood in the doorway with coffee in her hands and stopped when she saw them. Father and daughter together again. Alive. Real. Whole. She walked to the bed and sat beside Emma, taking her hand again. "How are you feeling?" Emma thought for a moment. "Tired. Confused. My head still hurts a little." The doctor came in and ran more tests. Checked reflexes. Asked questions. Emma answered quietly. Then she looked out the window. Then back at him. "There was someone with me," she said. The doctor paused. "Someone. A woman. I couldn't see her face very well. But she stayed with me." The doctor exchanged a glance with Sarah. Then he spoke gently. "Emma, sometimes when people have been unconscious for a long time, they can have dreams or visions." Emma looked straight at him. It wasn't a dream. She was there. Sarah covered her mouth again. She tried to hold back the tears this time, but she couldn't. "Mom, don't cry," Emma whispered. Sarah laughed through her tears. "It's not sadness, sweetheart. It's something else." The days that followed were filled with recovery. Slow, careful, miraculous. Emma began to walk again. At first only a few steps, with help, then more. She started eating normal food again. She asked for juice. She asked for her teddy bear. She asked when she could go home. Little by little, she became herself again. The doctors called it an unexpected recovery. Some said it was luck. Some said children were stronger than anyone realized. But Sarah knew what she believed. It wasn't luck. It was grace. It was faith. It was a miracle of the Virgin Mary. A week later, Emma was discharged. Sarah packed their things from the hospital room. Clothes, teddy bear, blanket, rosary. Emma noticed the rosary in her mother's hand. "You prayed with that?" Sarah smiled. "Every day." Emma looked at it carefully. "Can I keep it?" Sarah paused for a moment, then nodded. "It's yours now." Emma placed it around her neck and touched the beads gently. Then she looked at her mother. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Sarah's eyes filled again. "Never," she whispered. I was never going to give up on you. They left the hospital on a bright sunny afternoon. Emma squinted in the light and took a deep breath of fresh air. When they reached home, the whole neighborhood was waiting. There were balloons, handmade signs, people crying and clapping and hugging each other. Emma stepped out of the car and was immediately surrounded by love. Sarah stayed a few steps behind, watching, taking it all in. Then she lifted her eyes toward the sky. "Thank you," she whispered, "for hearing me, for answering me, for not letting me give up." A soft breeze moved through the air like a silent reply. And in that moment, Sarah knew something deep inside her. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new one. 3 months later, life had begun to feel normal again. Emma was back in school, back at soccer practice, back to talking nonstop, back to being a child. The hospital room felt like a distant nightmare. But Sarah never forgot. And every single day, she thanked the Virgin Mary for the miracle her family had received. Do you know someone who needs a miracle right now? Someone who feels like they are losing hope? Then share this story with them. Because sometimes all we need is to remember that we are not alone. That miracles still happen. That faith can still move mountains. Leave a comment and tell me, do you believe in the miracles of the Virgin Mary? And if you have lived through something similar, share your story too. The world needs more hope, more faith, more light.